I don't know how to make this bigger.
Hopefully that's not. What do you think, Donna? Okay, hi guys. As you can see, I'm not Jen or Steph. They unfortunately could not come in person today. So I have the privilege of introducing our speaker. We have Stacy Sherman, and she is yet another amazing Cincy Lend alum who gives back to our program by sharing her expertise. She will present today on the many nuances of the sibling relationship, current research, and opportunities for siblings throughout Ohio and across the country. Stacy sought out our LEND program when she was getting her PhD in biomedical engineering from UC. Her participation paved the way for us to have sibling as a discipline in future LEND cohorts. She is amazing, and you will learn so much about true family-centered care from Stacy. So you can take it away.
Oh, thank you. I loved my time at Lend, and I still love coming back every year. And just, you know, Jen and Steph, they're amazing. So just enjoy it and have fun. And I'm, you know, really honored to be here. I'm always like, I don't know, like, how am I here? Like, what qualifies me to like be speaking to all of you? I feel really lucky because I know all of you are also, you know, really well trained and the best in your fields as well. So it's just a privilege to be here. And I'm sorry, I'm virtual. I really intended to be in person. I did have a baby about a month ago, and I thought that I'd be ready, that she would be ready for me to leave. And I am ready, but she is not quite. So I just didn't want to put too much stress on us. And so I think I should be good for a couple hours. She may make a guest appearance, though. We'll see. Yes, so my name's Stacy, and I'll kind of be talking about the sibling experience. As you can see from, okay, so I'm sharing my whole screen, aren't I? So I'm going to move this over here. So, oh, thank you. Okay, so yeah, so my name's Stacy. I'm sharing my sibling experience. You can see in these pictures, my brother's disability is like pretty visible. He has cerebral palsy. His name's Ryan. And so first I'll kind of go through the objectives of my presentation. Here's a picture. These are my two older kids, Colette and James, and then this is my brother pulling them in a little wagon. This was last Halloween with my dad. Anyway, so today we'll kind of identify the needs of siblings and define challenges associated with how things are done kind of currently, or at least when I was experiencing them, and how we can integrate kind of these support initiatives that are existing, and then the existing care schemes, and how we can kind of work for siblings, make the existing, the resources that are already available work for siblings and families together. Let's see, how do I get, oh, whoops. So I'll first talk about my background and kind of introduce myself. Then we can talk about sibling support and how the kind of an introduction, just overview. Then we'll talk about siblings throughout the lifespan and talk about some support that is available. Then at the end, we'll have, we can call it a panel of sorts. I didn't bring in anybody outside of the current LEND cohort, but I thought it might be a good opportunity to highlight some experiences from the current cohort, some siblings that are already in, you know, in your cohort that aren't in a sibling discipline, that are in other disciplines, but that are siblings. So I thought that would be interesting, and it can be kind of an open discussion at the end. Let's see. Okay. Right. So this is my family. I have 3 siblings, but my brother is the oldest. His name's Ryan. He's, I don't know, 37 now, and he lives in a group home a mile away from my parents' house. I should say it's a community living home. And actually he doesn't have any roommates right now. So, but he does have 24/7 care at his apartment. And my parents live a mile away from him. My parents and my brother both live in a small town where I grew up in Ohio called Minster. And yeah, so that's where we grew up. It's a very small town. My whole family was from there, my cousins and everything. I also have an older sister. This is from her wedding. And she got married in 2020. So this was her wedding rerun when she actually had my niece, Isla, as a guest at the wedding. And so yeah, so she lives in New Jersey. She is in IT and she works for Johnson and Johnson. And this is her husband Tyler, which sorry, I don't know if you guys can see that. And then I'm the third. I'm 2 years younger than her. And this is my husband Rob and my daughter Colette. And this was before my son was born and my next daughter. Like I said, I live in Cincinnati in Oakley. I went to UC for biomedical engineering. I got a PhD there. I graduated and now I work in the pharmaceutical industry in drug development for a drug that has musculoskeletal applications. So a lot of my driving factor was to go into biomedical engineering was kind of my experience with my brother's musculoskeletal issues, even though the drug I'm developing specifically doesn't have an application for the issues that he experiences. But anyway, my education path kind of led me in that direction. So, that's been a really inspiring thing for me to, it's really influenced my life. And so in more than one way, I guess. And then the youngest sister, her eyes are closed, I didn't notice. This is Amanda. She recently moved back to Cincinnati, which I'm super excited about, not only to get more support for myself and for, oh, somebody's from Salina. Hi. Yeah, I don't know, maybe we've run into each other. But yeah, so she just moved back to Cincinnati. I'm excited about that because I can get more support locally for when my parents go out of town or something. Then my sister is actually around, so she can help step in when I feel overwhelmed because I have so many children. For example, one time recently when I was pregnant with my third, my parents went on a cruise and Ryan didn't have any staff available for that weekend. And it was really stressful for me because I was newly pregnant. I did not feel well. I had 2 other kids. So I was kind of pregnant, kind of pukey, needing to take care of my brother. It's a very physical thing. So, new in my pregnancy, I don't really work out anyway. And we have lifts and stuff like that, but it was just one of those things that was difficult to manage. So now that Amanda's in town, she can help manage that sort of thing, which is really nice. So she's in Cincinnati, which still isn't Minster, but it's at least a drivable distance. She had previously been in Minneapolis and she is a chemical engineer. So that's kind of my family. I'm the third, like I said, we're all 2 years apart, except for my younger sister's 4 years from me. But it was kind of a roller coaster growing up because we were all so close in age. My parents were doing the best that they could, and they did do a great job. But I have 3 kids and it's insane. So I just felt like this is a roller coaster. And then since being the third kid, I just feel like I kind of always get glossed over because Ryan needed a lot of medical attention. Bridget was kind of like this golden child, the first one to be able to meet all these milestones and do sports and things like that. And then Amanda was the baby. So of course she, got more attention than any of the rest of us. Well, besides maybe Ryan, but okay. So that's kind of like my background, my family. I'm going to transition now into what research shows about how typical siblings experience, the experiences of typical siblings and what research says about them basically. So sibling relationships are the longest lasting relationships. You think about, you have your parents who often age and then will die. And then you have your siblings who are there from the beginning to the end, your friends you meet later in life. So your siblings are really there beginning to end. And they're important because a lot of, as you'll see later, a lot of siblings end up taking over responsibility for people with disabilities. They're also peers. So they can help, their siblings navigate social situations. They can help their siblings meet people. They can help advocate for their siblings, even to their parents, about, you know, independence and how new technology may be helpful, things like that. So it's really important. Siblings play a really important role. It is, the experience of siblings is highly varied by, and of parents as well, but of the whole family. You can imagine it's varied by your diagnosis, the family dynamic, your socioeconomic status, your culture, and then for siblings also, like their birth order. So I think even of my own kids, my oldest daughter has a completely different mom than my youngest daughter does, and her experience as a newborn is totally different already. And so you can imagine that just gets more and more complex when your dynamic gets more and more complex. The biggest thing that I would want you to take away from this slide is that the sibling perspective, the greatest factor in how the sibling views disability, how the typically developing sibling views the atypical sibling, the biggest factor is actually the parents and how the parents view the disability and their experience. And this is like an interesting thing for me to think about because, you know, my parents did a great job, like I said. And I'm not just saying that because my mom is here watching my kids and she might hear me. No, she's downstairs. But they, you know, the most important thing for me was that I always knew that I was loved and that they were doing their best. And even now I know they were doing their best. I cannot fault them for anything that they did. But the research shows that their attitude toward it is kind of how your kids will model their behavior toward it. And it's interesting to me because this is where I have to talk not too loud. I just realized in the past year that one of the things that annoys me the most about how my parents approach Ryan's disability and their management of Ryan's disability is sometimes they have this attitude of poor us. Oh, you know, it's always something, it's always us, like, oh, and they only have this attitude internally and only express it really to like me and people very, very close to us who deal with Ryan's disability. They don't express this to their friends, to like a broader audience. It's really just to me, and it is one of my things where I'm like, okay, and my brother has this attitude too, where he thinks, oh, poor me. And I even tell my brother and my parents, you know, it's okay to feel that way and it's valid, but you need to like get over that, right? And like accept it and move on at some point. And you can't like wallow too long. And I've realized recently that sometimes I do that too. And it was when I was re-going over these slides like 6 months ago, I was like, oh yeah, like I do that too. And I do that to my husband where I'll wallow, and I can't get past it. Only to people I'm really close with, but I'm like, wow, this is like a lesson to myself that like I'm modeling what I know, but I need to take my own advice. So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. And that I have given this presentation for, I don't know, 7 years or something, or no, I don't know, a long time. And I'm just now kind of realizing that. Anyway, siblings are more likely to go into helping disciplines, have complex emotions that they can't navigate because they don't have the coping skills. They're not adults and their brains aren't fully developed. And so as young children, you have these very complex emotions that adults even have trouble with, but children are just expected to manage them and just go through life as it is without getting a lot of support. They are also, these kind of go together, are more likely to accept people with a lot of differences, but they have their own differences in their family dynamic, and other like typically developing people are less likely to accept kind of the differences that they have because of in their family, you know. So that's kind of an interesting place to be, where you're accepting of people who are different from you or who have a different experience from you, but then other people don't really accept you. Oh boy, we'll see if these videos work. When I'm virtual, they have a hard time. Oh, okay. Okay.
Hey, Stacy, we can't hear that.
Can you guys hear it? How do I do that again? Oh,
I'm not
God.
sharing her screen though, she's sharing.
Okay. Oh, wait. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. I stopped my share. Let me share my screen again. Screen 2. Okay. Share. Okay. I think there's something I can do that's like,
Hey, Stacy.
When you reshare your screen, if you stop share it actually, and then reshare it, there should be a little button in that box that you can click in the left-hand bottom corner that says share sound.
share screen. Share sound. That's right. Okay. I forgot how to do that.
He deals with so much.
Okay, you're good.
Why does it restart the video? Okay, here we go. I think this is it.
It's not the best day ever. I didn't mean
We
it.
know you didn't, sweetheart.
Except I did, which makes me a terrible person.
Why didn't we just fix the door? What's wrong with making life a little easier for JJ?
Exactly. It's like he deals with so much and he doesn't complain. All I do is complain.
You think about that too? That's all I think. You guys feel guilty? You have nothing to feel guilty about.
Don't go wide. It's one day. You can have fun without your brother. Son of...
Yeah, right.
What does that mean?
Mom never does. Oh my God, this is all my fault. Ow! Ow! Oh, please get back. Guilty. No, for God's
So I thought that clip kind of this is from ABC's Speechless, and I thought that clip kind of encapsulated a lot of things. There's a lot of complex emotions. One thing that I often feel is guilty about doing things that Ryan couldn't participate in, just guilty about even like things like having friends or whatever, that I can't really control, but I feel super guilty about. And then it also demonstrates when the mom said, oh my gosh, this is all my fault because, well, she's feeling guilty, but also because the kids are like kind of modeling her behavior and her attitude toward it. So I thought that was kind of a clip that demonstrates that. Okay, so now I need to figure out how to get out of this. I can't remember how to do it. Go to the next slide. Okay, there. Oh. Okay. So there are mixed reports on outcomes based on like the research. Older studies show that there's higher rates of mental health concerns. Others say there's, good outcomes, low depression, high rewards. And it's kind of can be, like I mentioned before, diagnosis specific. But in general, it seems that like in reviews, it seems that siblings are doing well. This is just another kind of slide that I already kind of talked about, but siblings are more likely to experience positive emotions or positive experiences, like having a strong emotional connection with their sibling, but also some negative impacts like feeling resentment toward their sibling. They have a lot of opportunities to grow as a person, but also can feel isolated from people who don't have siblings. They can develop greater patience and understanding, but they may feel like they have to be more mature and responsible than people their own age. And then, yeah, we kind of already talked about that. Some demographics. There are, yeah, I guess I don't need to read this slide, but basically there are a lot of people with disabilities, and a lot of those people have siblings. And if they have more than one sibling, then there are even more siblings of people with disabilities than, people that have them. But anyway, all of this is just to say, it's worthwhile to support siblings because they also support the people with disabilities. So by supporting siblings, you're supporting people with disabilities as well. We kind of already talked about how there's differences in families and how that can manifest in a different experience for the sibling. So now this is the first, oh yeah, okay. This is the first small group activity. There are a lot of you, but I think, so I'm debating if I should have like 2 groups per group, but usually I just have 4 groups. One talks about childhood. One talks about adolescence. One talks about early adulthood, you know, like your 20s, and then later adulthood. It would be the 4th group, and you can just take that section of life. So like during childhood, the first group would be childhood. During childhood, what are the needs of a child? And how are the needs of a child different between, you know, and the same between, you know, for a sibling of someone with disabilities? And what could a professional in your field do to support a sibling of someone with disabilities during that period of their time, of their life? You know, if it's childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, or adulthood. So let's break into groups. I don't even know how to do this. Okay, so maybe all the virtual people just be one group, and you can be childhood. And then the people that are in person, 3 groups seems like a lot. I don't know.
We think
Are
each
all
one
of-
would be like 8 people a group.
Sure, that sounds good. And then just pick one.
You want to count off like 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
great.
That's a
Yeah.
good idea.
Okay. So yeah, Brad, go ahead. You'll be 1.
1, 2, 3, 4. No, 1.
No,
One.
1.
2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Okay, all the 1s can be in the front, 2's in the middle, 3's in the back.
Love it.
How
Okay,
long
great.
do you want?
How long do you want these groups to be in their breakouts?
Yeah, so let's do like 5 to 10 minutes, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, adolescents.
Speaking from the mother who has 4 children, I mean, I was gonna say, I know off the top, I have my own idea, because I've already lived it. I'm in like early 20s right now. Yeah. You just, yeah. Not to adulthood yet, that's good. Trying to think like in high school. I had 5 close together, I had 4 and 5 years, so they were all like, 2 were back to back with a gap, and then 2 more back to back. Joe's the youngest, has ability. Like that was the whole thing. It was easy to pump them together in grammar school because they were all the same people. Like they all watched the same TV shows. They were all in grammar school together. Even like sports things, they were all going to each other's sports. So I think that's one high school you're trying to like find your own identity. So there's like a lot of pushback in them as they find it. It would be more challenging and trying to support the big kid. Like then I should call like the 2 big kids, which are a little bit the same.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think we have to like.
And
I don't know, like the professional standpoint too, because we're not in as much of a diagnostics that would have been way easier for me because the therapist did include him in like OTs and PTs and they were really help us there, but like we weren't really in as much of that. So I don't know professional wise, I tried to make time for each one of them to listen. They all spun out at different times. And Joe was always happy by then. He was like pretty stable, you know, so he was just like, sure. And that might be. I don't know. It's interesting. I would say early adulthood. Pretty much next year. Just to like keep everything balanced. So I just support them and kind of like find their path.
Or I could have done
You know, like whatever's going on, like I think that's really important that they have that, but we didn't really utilize that in adolescence. Adolescence was just trying to shoot everyone.
Let's just like provide groups, counseling, therapies, even if they do take on that, like.
I mean, I don't think I answered it at all. I don't know. But it doesn't really answer the question. I mean, that's. Still having to give everyone more space to grow. And that was hard for me because it was easier to clump them all together. Yeah. But from a professional standpoint, I don't know that you're really relying more on the schools than in that level. And high school, there's don't have as much connection with the teachers that you do at grammar school. So I don't know. Have you worked with adolescents yet?
starting their own lives.
So what would you say?
Adolescents, like, I want to be independent, right? I do my own things, and I think there are little ways in which you can like let that independence happen, so like, not necessarily for siblings of people, but just for teenagers in general, I like, what are the things that they can choose to do by themselves that you're okay with? Yeah. And then like that being an area where like they can practice their independence, so that they're not kind of like so that they feel uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm like.
And that's harder for the parent, I think, honestly, to let them be uncomfortable.
Due to a lot of Down syndrome.
Right.
Yeah. So.
But I think like, and it's my broader sense, like, letting them do that, like Joe has like that.
So, and she lives 4 hours away, so I didn't have it,
but then I
go
don't
home a lot, but I was told
my oldest
my
twin,
middle.
they have like these anxiety. So I mean, I kind of look at like, it's not like a physical disability like Joe has, but I think you have to take into account like everybody's like
Everybody's got a thing.
everybody's got a thing. Yeah, and the later they got, it was hard, you know, that is hard to manage by one. And like the other two were anxious, and then, you know, you're trying to like make sure they're all safe and trouble or making a decision that's gonna like use a roadblock. That was literally my best advice, like, don't put a roadblock in front of you. Like, you're gonna make mistakes, don't make it like so big that you like kill someone in a car accident. Like, and like, don't put one of those in front of you, like, have little mistakes. And try to survive them. Don't really mess up, or I don't know where we go from there. Yeah, I mean, I think that, but to your point, I feel like you get. Her brother has like a very physical disability. But even like a mildly autistic who like can be very high functioning. So like there's, it all needs to be, I think any family needs to be supported, is fine. And they all.
That's like, I don't, that like, either. And they still do.
That's definitely should. Or like this ability to like their sort of personality.
Okay, everyone, please wrap up what you're, oh, am I, can anyone hear me?
Yeah,
If
we
you
can
can
hear
hear me.
you.
Okay, great. If
And
you
I
can hear me,
closed the
just-
breakout rooms. They'll be closed in less than a minute.
Okay, great. Just wrap up what you're talking about.
Well, also develop but also like potentially people. This is also the stage when kids start to develop the ability to like think about their feelings and talk about that. So potentially from a professional standpoint, like establishing.
Whatever I said, pretty much was not challenged, and then they get older and they're still challenged. Why are you doing this? They have, they're all on
Okay, looks like we have the majority of the virtual people back. So in person, let's also kind of wrap it up and we can come back as a big group and discuss. Okay, so I guess we can start with the group that was virtual. And I think that would have been, the childhood group. So I think that was the virtual group, right? So do you want to pick, I should have said this at the beginning. I always forget this part. I'll add this to the slide. One person should, or multiple people, that's fine, but we're gonna like talk about it as a bigger group. So if somebody from your group just wants to take the lead and talk about what you discussed in your smaller group. Sorry, I should have made that clear in the directions.
I can take a stab at it, I guess. So I think what our group talked about was, as far as the first question goes, one of the biggest things is just like not leaving things open for interpretation about what their sibling's disability is. So kind of going into the second question is the job of the provider and also somewhat of the family too, to try and educate the sibling as much as possible as like what the disability is, alleviate any questions or concerns their sibling might have, and kind of let them know in general what the supports and services are that are in place for them and how they're still able to promote a good quality of life and have a happy well-being just like those other siblings are. And then the other piece of it too was that a lot of attention has to be paid to the attention that you're spreading amongst the siblings. So like on one hand, you want to try and integrate the child with a disability in your whole family unit, and then also still leave room for that one-on-one time so that the siblings can still feel valued and like they're a part of the family too. And it's not like all focus is on the kid with a disability. And then lastly, for as far as professionals can help, just educating as much as possible, providing resources of things to learn, maybe like panel discussions for the families to attend to learn more about that perspective of like how to manage family dynamics, just really leaning on all the supports and things that are in place to help the family as much as possible.
I love that. I love the idea of giving the parents support to support the sibling. And we can talk about resources. We're going to talk about resources a little bit later, but I do love that idea of, asking, getting the parents thinking about it. And it's important. I know some parents have told me at sibling events, well, I want to show that my typically developing child that, I go to these events too, and I'm trying to spend time with them and time learning how to support them too. So I think that's a good point. Definitely all good points. Anything else to add? Or anyone in the in-person audience?
I think
we'll talk
that
about it more.
one of the things we also talked about was making sure that the children don't think the sibling's condition is catching or contagious, because some of my siblings have thought they would become autistic or disabled or whatever, and it's fear-inducing. And making sure that the families know that there's an open, that the families develop an open communication so the children always feel able to ask their questions about their sibling with issues.
Right. It's about like setting that up within the family, and helping the family set that up so that they can ask questions without feeling stupid or whatever. And a lot of people I've talked to have had that similar experience of they're afraid that they'll like catch whatever their sibling has. So understanding what the diagnosis is and why there is a diagnosis, that it's not something that's catchable for children, especially, is important. Thank you so much. Whoever had adolescents, whatever group had that, if you want to.
Sorry, I was just going to make a quick point to the childhood. I think it would be really neat as a professional to teach the siblings how to even advocate or explain their sibling to other peers and friends. I used to nanny 2 little boys with disabilities, and not only giving like them the independence to discuss kind of like how they were to other children who asked why they acted certain ways, but even just the other sibling who did not have a disability to talk to their friends and be like, yeah, my brother acts this way, but he's like, he plays with the same, like, but this is how we can help him. Just so giving them that language too.
Yeah. And there are some books and stuff that also help kind of explain it if parents don't know how, or, and I've even gotten some for my kids, because I don't know how to explain a lot of it. It's hard to know as a parent what to say and what they'll understand, or, what is developmentally appropriate language. Sometimes even as a parent, I'm like, I don't know, I'm doing the best I can here. So there are a lot of books about that. And so I think pointing parents to books could be helpful too, giving kids the books. There's some books at the library too. I actually just found a really good one the other day that I checked out for my kids. But yeah, giving them developmentally appropriate language for sure is important.
Sorry, I was just going to add to the childhood. So I am a parent to 4 kids, and my youngest has a disability, but when they were younger, at his different therapies like speech and OT and PT, they were able to kind of incorporate the kids, because I had a hard time with childcare. So they would kind of work with the therapist when appropriate. And it was great because then when we came home, like the big kids felt like they could kind of work with Joe, like it was kind of a common ground. And then if I had to drag them to the appointments, they weren't as, upset to go, because they knew that they would kind of have a role to play. And Joe was frankly far more motivated to find the turtle for the big kids than he would have been for the therapist or for me. So it was kind of a win-win, but when appropriate, it was a good opportunity to be able to like incorporate him into some of the things and the skills they were working on with him. Yeah.
I can relate to that a little bit. Being a sibling, it's fun to have a role. And when my mom didn't have anyone to watch us, we would go to some of my brother's PT appointments, and he of course was older than us, but so I'm sure it was so chaotic. I can't imagine. I was looking back and like, what was my mom thinking? But she brought us to the PT appointments, and they had a pool, and my brother would get like aqua therapy, and we would all go swimming. I have no idea how she managed that. It's insane. So maybe not that far, but definitely it did make me feel like involved, and I loved going. And also it helps you kind of understand what your sibling is doing. It's not just like, oh, some appointment, it's helps you understand. Like then when my brother got older and I was in school, it was my brother still had those appointments. And all I remember really, since I was younger, all I remember really is like swimming and like how fun that was, and with like some of his speech appointments, people would, like teachers even would ask me like, oh, how's that going? Adults would ask me that. And I would say, I don't know. I don't know anything about speech. I haven't been to an appointment with him in years since before I started school. So anyway, they don't always need to be there, but the idea that they have some understanding of it is great. But also not putting the pressure on them to know everything. That's also important too. So it's kind of a delicate balance. It's hard to fulfill every need there, but I think you made some good points. Okay, let's move to the adolescence part. Whoever that group was.
So that was us. I don't know if you can see us, but that was us. So we talked about adolescence, and Julie shared some really great thoughts about just being a parent of 4 kids, right? 4 kids that were pretty close in age. And her youngest, Joe, has a disability, and she explained how when they were younger, younger kiddos, it was easier to kind of lump them in together, and they liked a lot of the same things. And so it was easier to do it that way. But as they got older and, into adolescence and teen years, that was when they wanted to be independent from each other and from parents. So she spoke to just about like supporting them and their individual personalities. And we talked about, like, in layman's terms, like everybody has their thing, and Joe's was just more of a, disability that may have been more visible. And she shared that her other kiddos have anxiety and like in their own things. So from a parent, like family standpoint, just supporting each person's personality and individual challenges and strengths, and just being mindful of just uniqueness. Yeah. And then from a professional standpoint, we talked about how adolescence is an emotional time, can be tricky. And Bradley shared some information about just being supportive as a professional. And we talked about therapy and how that could be helpful in letting adolescents kind of talk through their own challenges, and then how they're viewing their sibling with disabilities. Guys, did I cover everything? Okay.
You brought up some really good points. Sorry, is anyone else talking? I can't tell.
No, you're
Okay.
good.
Yeah, you brought up some really good points. And I will say, from my own experience and from talking to other people who are now adults, when you look back, kind of that adolescence time frame is the trickiest. Everyone has like their own childhood family stuff that they work through, but the adolescent time frame was like really tricky for me and for a lot of my friends who have siblings with disabilities, because everyone talks about like transition for the child with disabilities, and it's a transition for the kids without disabilities too. Not only that their sibling is going through a transition, but they also are. And the way that they connect to their sibling, and the way that they connect to other people, the way that they connect to their parents, their friends, that's all changing for them too. And it's very tumultuous, and oftentimes that's where there's not as much support, it feels like, too. And so there are some recent initiatives targeting that age group, but as a sibling, I think that can be the trickiest time. Then let's talk a little bit about early adulthood.
Yeah, that was our group. And we had a couple of people in here that have siblings with a disability. And what they were talking about is just like the complex emotions that might come with early adulthood, with some people leaving, some people staying, and that like transition period, and helping with that, like in a professional sense as well. It can be hard to like determine if you want to get a job and like find something with a purpose or go to college, that kind of stuff. A couple of us were talking about when we went to college, if we felt guilty leaving or like being far away and then wanting to move back. Some of us were talking about how if our siblings do leave, or sibling with a disability wants to be more independent, like that can kind of feel sad too, like they might not need you anymore. And then we were also talking about like age differences too. So some of us had closer age gaps between siblings, and then others had large age gaps, and like the differences between those experiences. Is there anything else?
We also talked about like life milestones. So also like getting married and having kids, and trying to like navigate having your own life, but also, trying to support your sibling and then also have them involved in that life as well.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm an early adult anymore, but I definitely feel that. And it's hard when you have young kids, juggling yourself and your kids. And I guess we'll talk about this. I have a slide related to the sandwich generation, but definitely I relate to that. Okay, let's quickly do the last group, adulthood. And then I have some slides that I'll go over.
Okay.
I guess ours is not wholly unlike early adulthood. We didn't necessarily define that cutoff point. But we kind of talked about a lot of the transitions that might be occurring in adulthood for the siblings. So similar to what you guys said, maybe getting married, starting your own families, choosing whether or not you want to live close to home and maybe provide more support in that way, or kind of pursue a more independent route somewhere farther away. You might have parents passing away in the adulthood phase of your life. So then what does that kind of look like for the siblings, and what kind of responsibility falls on them, and the guilt that might come with not accepting that responsibility. So I think as professionals, like we've all talked about, providing resources to support whatever choices are made in this phase of life, and kind of validating that those choices are acceptable, whatever they are. Anything else?
Yeah, one thing I'll mention, which I don't mention often in this presentation, is that some siblings feel traumatized enough by their childhood, or their sibling may be like more aggressive physically or whatever, that they kind of choose to lead an independent lifestyle as an adult. And some people like that are members of support groups like CivNet, peer support groups, and CivNet strives to support all decisions that siblings would make, whether it's to be like a live-in care provider or to be completely removed from your sibling, and kind of the grief that goes with that. So that's an interesting perspective that some people have, and often it is, how they were raised and what their experience was like, and if they were supported, or if they were forced to do stuff that they weren't comfortable with as a kid, then as an adult, they kind of have to remove themselves from it. So it's definitely something that happens. I would say more often than not, siblings are more involved, but there are some siblings who completely say, I can't do that. I can't do it anymore. And CivNet is a peer support group I'll talk about, but it's very much, they try their best to support every sibling's decision about their involvement in their sibling's life. There occasionally are people who will post something like, oh, I'm not involved at all. And then like the people who are super involved will be like, you're terrible. But usually the moderators get that pretty quick and are like, nope, not allowed. You got to support everybody. So anyway, interesting. Yes, thank you all so much for that. I do have a couple of slides about each of these different categories that I'll go through, and we already talked about most of it. I'm not trying to it'll just be kind of like a recap, or sometimes I'll see a picture or a slide that will remind me to mention something that I forgot. So, and then we'll do a quick break, I think, after I do these next couple of slides. So I just added this picture. This is my daughter, actually, who was just born. We just got these pictures back. So I just added, so I had to include her. Anyway, but the rest of these are my brother, Ryan, from 1986, and my parents. He was born 26 weeks, I think. But my parents were traveling and in a hospital that didn't have the appropriate things that he needed. And so there are many babies that, especially now, that are born at this gestational age that are fine. But Ryan ended up having obviously some disabilities related to the early birth. Anyway, early childhood, kids can be advocates at a young age, but they don't have the coping mechanisms like we talked about. They start to notice differences. There may be safety concerns. I mean, even my daughter, my baby, there's safety concerns. My 2-year-old is constantly like sitting on her. So, there's safety concerns that could be apparent there. Research says that if there's a difference in the experience of siblings with people with disabilities and siblings without of all typically developing people, then there's not likely a large difference in this age group. School age, I wanted to touch on this picture. I drew this picture. Ryan bit me on the back. He bit me on purpose. And anyway, the whole note is about how I'm mad. And this says, my stinky old brother. And so that just goes to show that like siblings are siblings and they're always going to bother each other. And so even though I love Ryan and there are differences, you know, he's still my brother. We talked about catching it, and the confusing questions from teachers and peers, which to give them the appropriate language. In school age, they can be the first peer advocate and model appropriate behavior, help them get appropriate language and advocacy. I think the most important thing, school age and beyond, is to give the sibling the information, developmentally appropriate information, and don't hide anything. And if there's a term for the diagnosis, give them that term. But they get to choose how to use that information. And that's what research shows as well. Like they should choose their level of involvement. If you force it too much, then that's when in adulthood you get that separation and that resentment. But if you give them all the information, then they get to choose how involved they want to be. That's the best approach, which maybe is obvious, but sometimes isn't. I don't know. And there's both positive and negative experiences, obviously. Yeah. How do I get this? Okay. So in the adolescent years, like I said, this was a really complex time for me, mostly because my sibling went through a kind of psychosis when he graduated. He was 4 years older than me. So he graduated from high school. And then, as many people with disabilities find, they find themselves, you know, they don't have anywhere to go. They don't know what they're doing. And they're finding out that they're realizing finally that, you know, when their younger siblings start to drive and start to go to college and move out, that their life trajectory is significantly different. Like, I think Ryan and all of us kind of always knew that, but it becomes really apparent at that age. And so that was difficult for Ryan emotionally. And he kind of went into a deep depression and started to like kind of have these episodes, and, you know, kind of a 1.5 to 2 years time frame where he was having hallucinations and not really talking to us, not sleeping. It was very difficult. And so for me, I'm in high school during that time, and that's when he moved out because my parents couldn't take care of him 24/7 anymore. So he moved out to a nursing home, which wasn't the best fit, but that was the only thing available. And for me, it was really hard to also accept that and to not feel guilty or responsible, since I was the one who had just got my license and who was talking about college nonstop, and then went on a college visit, and then that came back, and that's what happened. So anyway, this is a really difficult period of time. I couldn't connect to my friends because they were all talking about like sports and boyfriends and all of that, and it was just so trivial to me. And so I felt like I didn't have any friends, and that's a really hard time in your life to feel that way. Anyway, that's enough about me. But what helps? Shared activities with your sib. You can have better social support, emotion-focused coping versus problem-focused coping, validation of their feelings, letting them have their own identities, letting them be themselves. Those things can all help. In early adulthood, we kind of already talked about all of these things, how important, how much stress. One thing that for me, my husband and I are high school sweethearts, and my husband helped me through that really rough time. And it's really kind of one of the things that made our relationship so strong, I guess, when we were in high school. But and then, you know, he helped me through that, and I kind of was already there. But in speaking with other siblings of people with disabilities about their kind of relationships and like romantic life and searching for a partner, I think it can be really difficult. to find someone who accepts it, and kind of knowing where you're going to go and if they're going to, how involved that person is going to be in your siblings' care, and when to bring it up. A lot of people, there are so many questions about when do you bring it up to the person you're dating, like that you have this, your sibling, and then also like if you have plans of them moving in with you, you know, how do you bring that up to somebody that you're dating, or when? So that's an interesting thing, and there's no right answer, but here's some research about, you know, what choice that an early adult might have to make, and how that, you know, how their sibling affected that choice and how important it was to them. So obviously college majors, dating, moving away, and the friends that they keep are major things there. Talked about all this. Oh, okay. So this is a clip about future planning. And I just thought it's kind of nice to have a video to kind of
Hey,
show
is
this.
JJ here? Maya?
Yes, my darling.
We should talk. Ray asked me some questions, and I didn't know the answers.
Was it trivia? Ugh, Ray, I've told you, don't make your dad feel stupid. It's all right, darling, it's over now.
It's about JJ. Down the line, what his life will look like, what he'll need after us.
Are we doing this? Finally, I want to talk about this too.
Bloody hell. I thought you were just taking him to see the windows.
Well, you did it, bud. First step, big things to follow. Sky's the limit. I'd like to go in myself. Oh, Mr. Independence. Doors are flying open already.
Can he drive, go to college, maybe start a family of his own?
And once you guys are gone, whatever he wants to do, who's gonna help him?
Where's JJ gonna live? What kind of help will he need? We don't know. Will you two be a part of it? I hope so.
I mean, realistically, is your brother ever going to be able to live on his own? Probably not.
Hey, how'd you get here? We need to talk. Oh, of course. Come in.
So yeah, I mean, that clip was more about JJ being left out, but I think it just shows that siblings have those thoughts, even if they're not voiced. And so pointing out that, you know, oh, you should talk about that. That's important. Adulthood, there's a lot of legal stuff that happens in adulthood, which I won't bore you with since most of you are dealing with children, but, you know, guardianship transfers, special needs trust, it needs to be properly set up. Your parents' estate needs to be properly set up so that the money doesn't all go to social, or isn't like reclaimed. I think like the Social Security benefits can be affected. All sorts of boring legal stuff that needs to be pretty tight. So lawyers. There's also, you know, family dynamic concerns, which I think sometimes my siblings and I can get into, of like, I'm, you know, just like there's a default parent, there's also a default sibling, and I'm the default sibling, and kind of the resentment that I feel towards that, and kind of that I've been the default sibling for my whole life. You know, as a kid, I was the default sibling as well, which I don't mind, but it is nice to have occasionally when my other two sisters recognize it and tell me thank you for it, and ask me how they can get involved more. Those things help. Even if I still am the default sibling, I feel more supported in that. And there in the beginning, you know, earlier in adulthood, I've always been the default sibling, but then sometimes one of my sisters would come in and be like, well, why don't we do this? And I was like, well, we've been doing that, so just stop. So, you know, there's, again, like, she's still my sister. She can still annoy me. There's some statistics about financial hardship, which are kind of scary. So carers of people with disabilities are in the dark blue. Sibling carers are in the light blue. And this is the percentage in the bracket. So 76% of carers are less than 50,000, and then 28% are less than 15,000. So basically, if you're a sibling, you have a higher likelihood of being in these low brackets than if you're a parent or some other carer. And then this was the sandwich generation. Basically, you are juggling caring for so many people, your aging parents, your sibling with disabilities, and your own children. This is kind of where I feel I'm at right now. My parents are still pretty involved and good, but there's definitely times when they hurt themselves and I'm worried about them. Okay. Diagnosis specific concerns. I think we all know. Okay. Okay, so we'll talk about, oh wait, sorry, I did want to mention grief support. Obviously, sometimes, unfortunately, siblings can be young when their siblings die. And so having support, basically what siblings said is that reducing the pain, just like with any death, but reducing pain in the final days for their sibling was important to them. And then developing healthy coping responses, making sure that you discuss it and have open communication and opportunities to share. And they're likely to have, survivor guilt with the death of a sibling, and also without the death of a sibling, you have some survivor guilt about, not having a diagnosis. Anyway, okay, so now can we do a quick break for, if you need to go to the bathroom, does anybody need, let's just do like a 5-minute break. Is that okay? We'll get back together in a few minutes.
I think I could like feel it.
I don't know, right? I mean, honest to God, I think I'm gonna take you. Right, that's not even in the portal. They're gonna like your eye.
And I'm like, sure, go like 10 more in the neighborhood. That's a great question. I think it's okay. Okay. Oh, no, so that, yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. I don't know. Positive. Okay. I said the calendar by skipping. Always forget. You haven't done anything yet? I just wanted to follow up. Checking out. But they feel like I might forget. Yeah. Yeah. Which is yeah.
Hi.
It's still, but
Yeah, they're in my ear. You can't hear me.
yeah, but I do. Yeah.
Are we done?
I know. That's all.
I was like, listen. Okay. So basically, the two of them met. They were like, let's get out of Ohio. Like, I can take care of myself. Oh, yeah, great. If you need to tell them that though, it's just like, we're about to talk. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, does it seem like people are back? Maybe?
Can you hear me say some question?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There's still a few business. Do you want it?
Okay, maybe I can't hear you.
There's still a few trickling in. I think maybe 1 minute. Okay.
I think they have to respond before the 7 also. Oh. Oh.
All right. I think most are back. We can probably start.
Okay. So the next part of the presentation is just talking about resources for siblings. So resources groups that are out there. So there's a copy of the slides on the Drive thing, Blackboard thing. And so hopefully you can kind of keep some of these. I don't have any obviously physical flyers for you, but you can look at these and hopefully give them to people as needed. And I have links to them too. So Sib Shops, they just had the final, or no, this Saturday is the final Sib Shop of 2023. They don't have the 2024 Sib Shop calendar out yet, but she said she will send it to me when she does, and I will pass it along when I have it. But I have another slide all about Sib Shops, but basically it's a peer support group for children of people with disabilities. The age group is 8 to 12 years old. Sib Shops they do cost $10, except there are some county boards and things like that that help pay for it if needed. There's also at Cincinnati Children's something called Sib Club. To my knowledge, this is still a thing. Oops, sorry. But it's at the Family Resource Center every Tuesday, 5 to 6. There's siblings of patients at Cincinnati Children. There's also every year, this is again an outdated flyer. They did have one this summer and I just didn't update the flyer, but every summer there's a sibling symposium hosted at Cincinnati Children's. I was part of planning for several years until recently when I had too many kids. But basically it's a really cool event. It's for siblings, it's for parents, it's for care providers, it's for doctors, physicians, everything can go. And so that's a really fun event. It's in the morning, one Saturday every summer. There's also this website that I linked is, and I also put like a PDF of this like a printout in and uploaded it to Blackboard. But basically this is a really nice website, I thought, from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And it's all about preparing siblings for their siblings' surgery. So I remember when I was a kid, my brother got a very significant hip surgery, and he was in like you know, a cast from his belly button down, and it just visually was very scary, and my parents were scared, and he was maybe only 8 years old, so I was maybe only 4 years old when this happened. And I was very confused. I remember being terrified that he was like gonna die. I had no idea what was going on. And it was a big deal. And then my parents, from my memory, didn't really talk about it with me before it happened. I just kind of had inklings of their conversations here and there. And then same with afterwards. They never really asked me like, are you okay? Or like, this is what's gonna happen. So I think it's really important when you have a major surgery like that, or even a minor surgery, to prepare your other kids for their sibling surgery. I know I almost forgot to take my own advice when my son last spring got he just had tubes. So it's a pretty minor surgery, and especially for someone like me, I'm pretty familiar with disabilities and people having a lot of surgeries like my brother, and you know, that, and then also in my PhD work, I just knew that getting tubes is a very minor surgery, but it's still a procedure. And I realized my husband and I were talking about it in front of my daughter, and she was very concerned and confused, and I realized, wow, I didn't even take my own advice, even though this is a simple procedure, and she'll just be at daycare while we take him in. It still is something that we're talking about a lot, and so we should be talking about it with her as well, so that she knows what's going on. Okay, this is more about Sib Shop. It's not therapy. There are no therapists there, but there are facilitators, and it's just a way to meet other peers and talk about your siblings and yourself. And what a lot of times they'll ask you, you know, what are you interested in outside of your sibling, things like that. So I am not going to go over all of this, but I thought that this was a good resource for parents if you want to give them some of these questions. They're kind of conversation starters to have with your typically developing child. You know, have you ever heard of autism? Tell me about it. How do people get this? So that the parents can also have these conversations with their kid and like get ideas of what kind of questions they should be asking. Because I think sometimes as a parent, you're so deep in it, you may not know, you may not even realize, or you know that your other kids need support too, but you don't know how to provide it or what questions to ask them. So here's kind of like a list of questions that could get a conversation started. And that might be helpful for parents. So if you are talking to parents, you might be able to give them this list. And then also just tips for engaging with the SIB. Sometimes it goes and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, here we go. Peer support for siblings. So the Sibling Support Project, they have all sorts of different support groups. There's SIB Teen, that's just for teens, SIB 20. So I joined when I was in my 20s. So I joined SIB 20. It was really great for planning weddings. You know, people talk about like, what do you do to involve your SIB in your wedding if they don't like loud noises, if they don't like loud music, but you want to have music, if they don't like, you know, certain things. How do you find a partner, things like that in SIB 20. There's also SIB in Law support. And these are all Facebook groups and people, but they're like private. So they're moderated by adults. And it's, again, open, trusting forum. SIBNet is the one I talked about before. SIBNet is for everyone. So you can be in SIB Teen, SIB 20, SIB in Law, and SIBNet. SIBNet's for all of the siblings of any age group, but it's only for siblings. Like you can't be in it if you're a parent or a provider. It's just for siblings. And I find it to be really helpful. You can search, you know, if you're having a specific issue with, even if it's like something like toileting or something. Oh, geez, does anybody have any tips about how to get their sibling to do it, or how to manage this, whatever? It's really nice. Okay, so there's another support group called Siblings with a Mission. This was started by Nathan Grant, who is originally from the Cincinnati area. He helps to plan, and Siblings with a Mission helps to plan the Cincinnati Children's Sibling Symposium every year, and a lot of other events that are great. They also have a story column It's on their website, and it's really helpful when you are a sibling to get, to know that you're not the only one. So these story columns, people write in, and then you can look up these different stories of other people who have felt that way, and maybe how they dealt with it. And this is a public story column, but oh yeah, here. So this is just a screenshot of what stories they have, and so you can go through and try to find one that you might relate to if you are a sib. There's the Sibling Leadership Network. They have active chapters. So this is a national organization. They have active chapters in each of the blue states here. And if you are in a state that is grayed out, then you can join other state chapters. But the state chapter for Ohio is called Ohio Sibs. Ohio Sibs was actually founded before the Sibling Leadership Network. All of these sibling groups, so Siblings with a Mission was the most recent one to be founded. All of these siblings groups like maybe didn't have the most awareness when they started. So then now they all work together pretty seamlessly. There's no like competition or anything. They all promote each other's events. They all help organize each other's events. It's very collaborative. So anyways, Ohio Sibs is the one in Ohio. It formerly was only for adults. They really focused on adult support. More recently, they've been worked, and then Siblings with a Mission was more for adolescent support and teen support. And more recently, they've come together, and they kind of are able, because they have more people and more energy with everyone together. They're all volunteer groups. They're able to address needs across the lifespan, which is really nice. So here's some virtual events. These are technically Sibling Leadership Network / Ohio Sibs. They have a symposium I think they had this every month in 2023. This was put together by the Sibling Leadership Network. A lot of really cool topics: sibling perspectives on love, dating, marriage, and the baby carriage. A lot of people joined that one. They have a podcast with different things. They have a Sib Talk calendar every month. They had I guess this isn't every month, is it? Maybe. Anyway, almost every month they have a topic, and virtual meetups or info sessions. They also had a future planning series here in February. So there's all sorts of events that happen, and these are mostly virtual. Ohio Sibs also partnered with, oh gosh, I think it's called Be Well, but this is to offer sibling meetups and counseling. And so they offer it, I think the first couple sessions are free, and then you can continue to like use your insurance or private pay. Not for the sibling meetups, they're free, but the sibling counseling. And they're with professionals that obviously have experience with that. This organization was founded, the therapist is a sibling herself. So Ohio Sibs has a conference every year. It's the longest running sibling conference. And Ohio Sibs is the longest running like sibling organization. So Ohio Sibs was like the first one to be founded, which is really cool that it was like in Columbus. And Dr. Tom Fish started it, and I don't know if any of you know him, but he's a great guy. He's retired now, but anyway, so it's April 13th, 2024, and it's usually in person. We had a few virtual ones there for a few years, but a really good time to connect in person with other siblings and in Ohio. So, oh, this is the Ohio Sibs fundraising gala. They have one every year. They usually have like a performance, and it's really a pretty neat event. The Sibling Leadership has an advocacy toolkit. Again, this is for adults, so I'm not going to go into it, but they give you language, and they give you, there's a lot of, so the Sibling Leadership Network focuses a lot on like policy and stuff like that. So they give you policy updates, and they got siblings to be included in FMLA. They got the sibling, because it used to say like parents, they got siblings to be specifically called out. It used to say like parents, caregivers, whatever, but it never mentioned siblings. And so now siblings are specifically mentioned in the FMLA policy. So that was a big win. Okay, so this is another breakout session. And we'll have to do this quickly because I do want to do a panel at the end, but I have 3 sibling stories uploaded onto the drive. Let me see, I'll try to. They're on the drive, so hopefully some of you have access or can share. One is I almost didn't get married because I was obsessed with my sister. The second is why Welcome to Holland never resonated with me. And the third is a sibling's suppressed emotion. Does everyone have access to the drive to find these? I am not hearing anything to the contrary, unless I cannot hear.
Yes, they should all have access on Canvas.
So those are the 3 stories. So break out into, originally I was thinking like 3 groups, but it seems like a pretty big group for 3 groups. So maybe do like 6, I don't know, 6 smaller groups.
Did you want 6 total? Because there's 11 or 12 people online. Is that too big of a group? I can split them into 2, and then the people in the room we can split into 4.
Okay. Sure.
And how long do you want for research?
Maybe 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if you guys wanna do the whole count off thing, it's probably the easiest, so count to 4. And then we'll split.
You're one. Yeah. So we're doing that again. 4, 1, 3. Oh, sorry. 1, 2, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, ones can be in the front right, 2's front-ish left, 3's back right. Ones and 4, you guys can do with the siblings press mode. Oh, okay. Taylor, you have yeah. 4? Yeah. I didn't do that. I'm just not aware of it. 3, you could do. I want to get married. Yeah, you look at oh, why wasn't it? Oh, why wasn't it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Where to? Sorry.
For those online, for the people in room 2 that I will move, you guys can do the I almost didn't get married article, and the room 3 can do the why.
Good, that is what I want to hear. You guys read that? Yeah. Okay. We can go first. It's a 1 page. It's really short. I was introduced to
You know, like what was the like I don't know. Like I did not feel like I needed to stand out with my parents, but I think that's so because my sister. So and we're also like 6 years apart and so and like I had to own she's been growing up, so like my mom got very much scared and my so very that's good. But I didn't resonate with them at all. I don't know about you, so I thought that was interesting. So my brother to get that's better perspective on what some people resonate with them.
Which he still lives at home, so in terms of like him out of the house, like that's something I could relate to because you know I have this friend
Right, I've never, it's
I
never
never
resonated
felt
with me,
like I
and I
had
grew up with
to
it.
yeah,
And also for me, it's not a positive experience, it's not something that I'm like, no, it's fine over here, it's.
I
no,
would
it's
say like
freaking
the
sucks,
idea
like,
of
this shouldn't
feeling
be, this shouldn't be how life is, and
just
so I think
not
it's different than one
automatic
people's
words for my
experience, where it's like, oh, I'm just seeing different kinds of like, still good,
or
rather
that
than
I
like.
resonated with them because they were just always going to feel that and I did
Yeah, it's minimal and stuff.
so I just always
Yeah, but I like, I mean, like, I grew up,
I
with,
was
like,
not
I know how to say all these things.
From that standpoint, I think I could connect a little bit, but it was never about competing, feeling needs and you don't have to worry about that. And sometimes that was hard, but yeah, but I think the similarities is something also that I related with, like if he were to ever leave, I think I would say because is that
So that they, most of them are gone.
That was one but
So.
yeah, I feel like in the way that the word is
Family.
in some ways, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I live off of
Yeah,
that.
I accept it.
That's just not.
Yeah.
But like I feel like it's really important for men to do that like every person has a really different really highly and also your family and there's also different family dynamics. So then you can't even like feel like, oh, everyone was our like great like that's probably like half for half like not really something. It's not a lot of common ground. That I feel like
Not just financial, but like emotional and psychological.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Right, we can take care of this thing.
Right.
Do all the rest.
I know, just having that.
Experience by just not.
I know, there's, oh no, it wasn't our classes, like everyone. No. I mean, that's just my view, that I'm sure there's like lots of people who learn about this, about people who foster intentionally, you know, they're like, yeah, I can do it, like, I can take care of a lot of kids with special needs. Bring it on. Just like, the person that you call, not me, I'm very stressed out with life is, but like, somebody who can be the person they call when life is good, or when they need to.
I always wonder in March.
Okay, everyone. Sorry, I know that this was not a lot of time and it was kind of long articles. But if you could wrap it up so we can talk and then hopefully be able to talk to some of the siblings in your cohort, that would be great.
Yeah.
We may not have a lot of time at the end to talk, but
It will do because.
we'll see.
I'm just like, maybe sometimes I said.
Yeah.
Like,
That's what I.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
There were 4 of us. It was I wasn't, they have 9 kids and they did a pretty good job of not identifying the kids. There was other stuff going on, but they didn't parentify the kids too much. It's already very responsible.
Yeah.
In ways I don't understand. They like, they just do the dishes without asking if there was any kids, you know, like.
You're probably the closest, but no,
Yeah.
you're also.
I feel like I showed up and like 3 of the boys were just replacing the room. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. So
Yeah, I
like.
think it was
are
pretty-
you You're not. Almost there. I just had something left.
Okay, it looks like we have all the virtual people back. Go ahead and get talking.
Yeah, I do. I feel like watching you.
So we can talk about this one first. Sorry, whoever had I almost didn't get married because I was obsessed with my sister. This was the longest one, sorry. So you may not have had much time to discuss, but does anybody want to take a stab at, can someone take a stab at, in either of the groups, take a stab at summarizing it, and just if you had a discussion or any thoughts that you had about this article?
We can go first. I don't know if the online group also had this article.
Oh,
But
sorry, I
we-
don't know who did.
Okay, well, we did, so we'll start. We had some mixed feelings about the article. We talked a lot about how there's like a lot of like guilt that we felt from this article. Like clearly this seems to be like a coping mechanism for the brother. He like takes on a lot of responsibility and like he's very involved in his sister's life, and that is getting in the way of like his romantic relationships. So he's kind of trying to figure out how to juggle that and balance that. We thought that this was a pretty extreme example, kind of on like one side of the spectrum of involvement. So we had some thoughts about that. But we thought that it was, we talked a lot about the guilt and the kind of coping mechanism that it seems like is occurring here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is like a Time article too, and obviously I think the title of the piece is like meant to get clicks, but I have met Brian Donovan actually. He was a speaker at Ohio Civ, one of the conferences, which was fantastic. And yeah, it is very powerful though, and it demonstrates the idea of the fact that he's very kind of focused on his sister, and it got in the way of his relationship. The other group that had this article, is there anything you want to add?
So I'll be honest, I don't really think we got a lot of time to talk about it, because it was longer, but the general impression that I heard from everybody was like, it was kind of like what the first group said, like it's a very sad and like heavy article to sit with. Some of the things that I took away from it that I was able to share in the group discussion was there was a part where he said that he had to let go of the idea of unconditional love. And I feel like that was coming from a place where he himself was like, I don't know, to me, there was a degree of like ableism that I think some of his partners were pushing towards him, of like not really accepting the fact that he has a sister that he needs to spend more time with and maybe like have more responsibilities with than like in a typical relationship setting. But at the same time, like there were things that happened where we're clearly like overstepping boundaries and like making his partners feel uncomfortable. So it's just like a really interesting and unfortunate dynamic to like see that like idea of like, well, if I want to be with someone who doesn't necessarily live in the world of disability and doesn't get it, then like I have to kind of sacrifice whatever I think is like showing up the most for my sister to make this other person happy. So I feel like in an ideal situation, like hopefully the other person maybe has like a sibling with like a disability or like has at least more like into that world so they could see more of it and like meet you more where you're at with like what you need. And then Janetta also put a comment in the chat that the conflict was a valid one, but the role of a protector was difficult for the girlfriend to address.
Yeah, I mean, one of the boundaries that stood out to me was like, why does Kelly sleep in your bed with you? Yeah, I mean,
same.
that's
Yeah,
okay.
that me too as well. I was like, yeah, that one. I probably would not like that one as much either. But
that's a boundary. But that does kind of demonstrate the like codependence, I guess. But anyway, yeah, complicated. Sorry, I'm just going to go ahead and move on to the next one. Why Welcome to Holland never resonated with me. This is also hard because the essay Welcome to Holland, if you may or may not be familiar with, but anyway, can someone who read this summarize and let me know if your group had any time to discuss, and if they did, what they thought?
Okay. We had the Why Welcome to Holland never resonated with me. And if anybody doesn't know, this poem or the story of Welcome to Holland is basically an allegory of a family planning a trip to Italy and then accidentally ending up in Holland. And it was supposed to be representative of a family who's preparing to have a child. And then they find out, I believe the child has Down syndrome in the story. So trying to, that kind of experience of being excited for a child, but it not being what you expected. And in this story, she talks about growing up in Holland. So just growing up in the world of disabilities. And we thought it was interesting. It's obviously, it's a big family. There's 13 children total, I think. And I think 11 of the 13 have disabilities, if I'm remembering correctly. And so we were just talking about that dynamic of like having lots of siblings, and then also a lot of them are adopted. So like that other dynamic that goes along with that. So we were just kind of discussing the different dynamics of that family in general, but also appreciating why she felt like she's always just grown up in Holland. So
yeah, she's basically saying, my parents were expecting Italy, not Holland, but I grew up in Holland and love Holland. So there is an aspect to me where it's like, you grew up in Holland, you love Holland. Part of you loves the chaos of it. Like in my own life, I'm like, it's like almost like an unhealthy chaos sometimes. And sometimes I'm like, why do I gravitate toward that? I don't need that. I don't need that chaos in my life. And that's part of my family dynamic, regardless of disability. But then there's also like that disability aspect, and part of me that always had that, and then kind of thought as an adult I might want that too, whether it's through adoption or whatever way. But yeah, so anyway, and the other group, was there another group that had this one? I don't know. Any other thoughts? Okay, and then the last one, a sibling's suppressed emotions. Anyone can feel free to take a stab.
Okay, so this story is about Catherine, and she is, or Katie, and she has an autistic twin brother. And it was essentially about a lot of the suppressed emotions and just experiences that she felt growing up with him. And for me and Gabby, who talked about like our experience being sibs, there wasn't a lot that we could really resonate with in terms of this. Katie talked about like feeling very invisible and sometimes feeling almost like a little bit of competition and trying to gain attention in her family situation, and also like struggling a lot when her brother left to go live in like a transitional care center. And for us, like our sibs still live at home. And if anything, the way that we related to it was more, or at least from my perspective, was the fact that feeling the need to always do well and always perform to a certain standard and be successful in things, more for the sense of not being anything that my parents have to like struggle with or worry about, because they already have a lot going on in terms of like what goes on with our siblings, but less so from like a competition standpoint or really feeling invisible. That was not something that we necessarily had went through, but could see that there was, some like validity in her own experience, and just kind of brought up the fact about how different it can be for different families with and different sibling experiences, and all of them are very valid and unique to who they are, but not necessarily going to be felt and like resonated with by everyone.
Right. Yeah, I agree. When I read this, I just felt it was like pretty like raw, or like it was pretty, she was pretty vulnerable in this piece. I felt like like I felt, to me, I just wanted to like give her a hug. But yes. Anyone else have thoughts about this? Definitely, I think regardless of the reason, one thing that a lot of siblings have is that like perfectionism, wanting to not cause any more problems, sweeping whatever problem they have under the rug. They have to, you know, be the best, so that they aren't adding any stress to the family type of thing. I think a lot of siblings experience that. Okay, so as far as my slides, I do have a couple more, but I'm just gonna get to the meat of it, like to the summary, and then so we can talk. I know we only have a few more minutes, but I just did want to give a short amount of time to talk to any of the siblings in the room, in your Lend cohort, to share their story a little bit. But you can reference the slides for other sibling stories. This is Kelly's Hollywood by Brian Donovan. Basically that families need support. Siblings are a part of the family. That is literally, when you say family-centered care, that includes siblings. So, you know, always try to make that a consideration in your own practice. Overall, one of the big take homes as well is that, you know, siblings are resilient and they have a lot to contribute. One thing that Ohio SIB talks about a lot recently was nothing about us without us. It's a common saying in the disability community, but it's also true for siblings. Like, don't do any future planning, or do, you know, if we're involved in any way, we should be involved. You know, if we're involved in the care plan, or if we're going to be affected by the care plan, that involves us. So involve us, I guess. Okay, like I said, I know we don't have much time, but I would love to be able to get some more, I guess, provide an opportunity for people who are siblings in the group to share their experiences. I'm assuming you all know each other mostly, or not really? As far as like, you know, do you know the people that I have that may be interested in sharing are Erica, Mariah, and Gabrielle. And so I don't know if people already know you. Did I say, am I right? So maybe if you guys want to like go to the, like all sit together so that you can share the microphone. Or whoever wants to share their story, any part of their story, can all like get together. You can be near the microphone. I know we only have 10 minutes, but I think this is going to be really important.
Should we just go through these questions and answer them?
So,
What we're doing?
no, so I can kind of moderate, I can lead. I just kind of put them up here in case there was like one that somebody felt really like, wow, I want to ask them that, or I want to hear about that, or I want to talk about that. But basically, I think to start, if people don't know, I don't know if people in the audience know you and your family. If they do, that's fine, we can skip that. If they don't, you can talk a little bit about that. What I would also just say is if there's anything that you want to share about your sibling experience that wasn't touched on during our presentation, yeah, let's start with that. That might be 10 minutes in itself.
Okay. I don't know if all of you know all of our stories, but I'm Gabrielle, Gabby. I'm 22. I just graduated college not too long ago, but right now I do this and I work for UC Health as a nursing aide.
And I have one sister. She's my younger sister. She is about 6 years younger than me. Her name's Jillian. She has Down syndrome. And yeah, I'll
Hi, I'm Erica. I think most of you know me. I'm here for graduate training, be a psychologist, hopefully work with kiddos that have autism in the future, developmental disabilities. I have a brother who is on the spectrum. He's like on the higher, for lack of a better term, end of it. I think he's 17 months younger than me. And then we have a 5-year-old, a sister who is 5 years younger than we are. And yeah, I grew up with him. I really kind of resonated with the last story with like the needing to like be perfectionist and like making sure everything in the house is good, helping my parents out. But yeah, we're really fortunate because my brother is able to be really mostly independent. He's able to do a lot of things. Wasn't like always like that in the beginning, but yeah, the story's a little bit different.
My name is Maria. I'm 23 and I am part of like the medicine discipline. So I'm currently also a medical scribe with children's. And for my like family situation, my brother is 13 months older than me. And he is or 12 months, 11, 12, 12. 13. Anyways, he's 24 and he's on the autism spectrum. And I also have an older sister who is 26 years old. So we're all like within 3 years. So very, very close in age. And I would say like in comparison with Erica's, like the way you were describing it, Salah is a lot more dependent on us. He lives at home right now. And yeah, so I'm excited to share a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you all. And thank you for agreeing to share. I know for me, especially when I first started sharing, it was really scary and emotional. Was there anything in particular that I missed in this session that you want to share? Anything that you, in thinking about or reflecting about your experience, that you want to share? If not, that's okay. I can go to the other questions, but.
I have something, although I think you touched on it a little bit. I think one thing that I thought was kind of interesting, and I was talking to it with these two, it's like I didn't even realize that my brother had a diagnosis or had a disability until probably high school. So like for me, it was just how it was. I didn't think anything different. Like he had a couple surgeries, and one thing that you were talking about with the surgeries is like my brother had brain surgery because his brain was like, what is it? Chiari malformation. I'm going to say that wrong. So that was going on, but I had no idea what was going on because my parents didn't really tell us. They were just kind of like, all right, your brother's going to go have this surgery. He also ruptured an eardrum when he was younger, and we didn't know because his pain tolerance was really high. So it was a whole plethora of things where he was just always getting surgeries done. And I didn't even like think, it wasn't like a scary thing to me because it was so common. I was just like, oh yeah, okay, he's going to the hospital again. So that was something that while you were talking kind of resonated with me. That was like, oh yeah, I didn't even think about how like scary that probably should have been for me or was for like my sister.
I talked to my sisters about that a lot, about like, when did you like notice or anything? And we were like, we didn't really even like notice it. Our brother's disability is very physical. Right. So like at first you don't really notice. And even when it's just your family, you don't notice. Our brother's older. So mine was like really when I started school and I realized like not very many people are in wheelchairs in my small town too. It's like a very small town. So I was like, oh, I guess that's different. But my parents, and I didn't know his diagnosis until I think I was in 8th grade when the first time my parents talked to me about cerebral palsy. They didn't even really say it. Like I don't even know. So yeah, it's interesting how you like don't really know, but then you're like, I should have like clued it. Like I think there's a part of you that knows and a part of you that's just like, this is just what it is. So it's interesting. One question I have for you all is if you are connected with any of the like Ohio Sib sibling with them, if you've been to any of the symposiums or like sibling events, and if not, or if so, either way, like when did you realize that you like needed support and how did you get it? Because I know for me and my sisters, I was well into I was in my 20s when I was like, whoa, that was a lot that I just went through in the past 20 years. Like, I should get support. And that's when I started to get involved with Ohio Sibs and Siblings with a Mission. So I'm just wondering for you guys, if you, and similar with my sisters, they were in their 20s when they were like, whoa, like that really affected me. So anyway, do you have any thoughts about that?
This is on. Okay. Yeah, none of us have gone to any of those support groups. Honestly, I didn't even hear about them until a few weeks ago when we had our like goals meeting. So, and then I heard about them. And I think that they're definitely needed because it is a lot. I know, like for me, I probably noticed that it was a lot in high school when my parents were talking about their will and I had to be my sister's caregiver and I had to like just advocate that I wanted to be her caregiver. And yeah, so that was hard. But yeah, so when you grow up, like obviously like thinking far in the future in your career, trying to include your sibling, I feel like is a big stressor. I know for me, I've always wanted to go to medical school, but that's like one thing that has kind of stopped me from wanting to go. So yeah.
I also for me, one moment in particular that I feel like I thought a lot more about it is when I love how you brought up like the term like default like sibling or default child, because I very much resonate with that. And I remember one time like my mom was just kind of like jokingly saying like, oh, well, like we know who's gonna be taking care of him. Like we all know who it's gonna be. And she's like looking at me. And it was like one of those things where I was just like in my head, like, well, yeah, like of course, like I'm gonna do it. But it was almost just like, shouldn't it have been like a conversation, and shouldn't it have been something where it's like we could like sit down and I could talk about like, well, what does that mean for me? What does that look like? And I think I started to just kind of consider a lot more of like what that would be, even though it was something where I kind of had already like internalized it. I realized I'd never really thought about like the financial side of it, how it might affect like future relationships and things like that. And so I think for me, it was trying to find a way to like vocalize that without feeling guilty about, you know, even questioning it, because I didn't want it to come off as questioning. I very much wanted it to come off as like, I want to do this. I just like want there to be a conversation, I guess, if that makes sense. So I feel like that was one of like the first moments where I started to think about it a lot more on my own, instead of just kind of like, and like actually thinking about the logistics of it, instead of just kind of being like, well, yes, of course.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that's a very common experience that you articulated really well. I appreciate that. Anyway, it's 3:00 on the dot. I could talk about this forever. If you have any other questions, you guys can contact me. I encourage you to continue talking about siblings in every kind of session you have. If there's like ever something that occurs to you, like, oh, you know what, a sibling could benefit from that or not. And continue talking to your, you know, as you always do, but with your other trainees who might be siblings. It's important. And I really thank you all so much for your time.
Yeah, and if anyone ever has questions for me, like I know we didn't have as much time, so if you ever do have any, I'm happy to answer them.
Hold on. My AirPod died. Where's my phone? Where is this? Can I hear you now? Maybe.
Oh, it was just Maria, and she was saying to the class that if anyone ever had any questions or anything, they could approach her.
Sorry, my AirPod died right at the end of that.
You're good. Thanks,
Okay.
Stacey.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Let me know if you have anything else.